I never believed in miracles until I saw a cleaning lady's prayer for my daughter in a coma. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was a chilly autumn morning. The hospital had an antiseptic smell, and the fluorescent lights buzzed in a way that made my skin crawl. The steady beeping of the machines surrounded me like a haunting lullaby. My daughter lay there, pale and fragile, nestled between the white sheets, a broken doll waiting for repair. I stared at her, and all I could feel was a suffocating weight in my chest. Clara was my only child. Just 15, full of dreams and laughter. And then, just like that, a car accident stole her away from me. She had driven home from a friend's house, and now I was sitting by her bedside, praying for a miracle that felt increasingly out of reach. Days melted into weeks. Each moment dripped with despair. The doctors had their words: brain activity is minimal, we can't say for sure. Hope felt like shards of glass lodged in my throat. Then came the cleaning lady. Her name was Rosa. An unassuming woman with weathered hands and a gentle smile. She swept through the room, scrubbing away the remnants of sorrow that hung in the air. One day, she paused. Her eyes met mine. They sparkled with something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. She pulled out a small, tattered book from her janitor's cart. "A prayer," she whispered, "for your daughter." My heart raced. Was this some kind of joke? I watched her kneel, trembling as she clutched the book. She began to chant softly, the words spilling from her lips like a secret incantation. Each syllable wrapped around my heart, drawing me in. The room felt charged, filled with an electric energy that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I couldn't make sense of it. There was no evidence, no reason to believe, but I found myself wishing. Wishing for Clara to open her eyes, to smile at me again. As Rosa's prayer filled the silence, I found my own hands trembling not with fear, but with a flicker of belief. The bustling nurses paused, exchanging glances, and the air crackled with uncertainty. I realized how absurd this was. A cleaning lady, invoking something grand in a sterile room filled with despair. But could it be true? The doubt clawed at me. And then, just as she finished, Clara's monitor began to beep erratically. My heart raced, pounding harder against my ribcage. I leaned closer, breathless. The machines whirred, and for a split second, I dared to believe. What was happening? Was this the miracle I had wished for? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The buzzing hum of the fluorescent lights reverberated like a pulse, creating a rhythm that matched the erratic beeping of Clara's monitor. My heart raced, the hope that had flickered into existence wrestled with the ever-present weight of despair. Please, please, I whispered, almost pleading with the universe, let this be it. I leaned closer to my daughter, gripping her hand, willing her to respond, to fight against the drudgery of fate, to open her beautiful blue eyes, but as quickly as the beeping escalated, it fell back into its slow, steady pattern. The nurses rushed in, their faces blurring into a haze of white coats and clinical masks. Urgently, they adjusted the 4 drips and monitored Clara's vitals, their practiced movements tearing immediacy from my hopeful heart. It's normal, one of them reassured me, her tone smooth but hollow. Just a reaction. Sometimes the body reacts to stimuli. It doesn't mean her words trailed off, but I felt the finality of the man echo that reverberated deeper than the machinery around us. Disheartened, I sank back into the stiff chair, my fingers brushing against the blanket covering her frail form. Rosa remained, the aroma of cleaning solution and something fresh wafting from her cart. She glanced at me, her eyes searching, understanding somehow. Her presence wrapped around me like a comforting embrace, and for a moment, it was easier to breathe. "Sometimes it's the little things that keep hope alive," she said, her voice a thread of comfort amid the rising chaos. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that hope was a tangible thing, something I could grasp in my longing hands. Struggling to form words, I managed, "How can you be so sure?" Rosa smiled, a warm, genuine smile that seemed to light up the otherwise sterile room. "Because I've seen it happen before," she replied, her voice soft yet firm. "Miracles don't always look like what we imagine. Sometimes, they're tiny little gifts that remind us not to give up." I squeezed Clara's hand tighter, my mind tracing the contours of her face, the memories of her laughter and her silly dance moves creeping in, fighting against the encroaching shadows. The mundane disaster around me felt almost laughable, my dread battling with an unwelcome sense of optimism ignited by Rosa's words. As days passed, the monotony of hospital life ebbed and flowed. With each dawn, I found myself craving those quiet moments alone with Clara. I would recount stories of our family vacations, of her childhood mischief, of her dreams of becoming an artist one day. I spoke to her as if she could hear me, my voice forming a balm over the collective sorrow that blanketed the room. Then, one afternoon, while I was trapped in the ebb and flow of emergency room routine, I noticed something unexpected, a small bouquet of daisies perched on the windowsill, their bright petals swaying in the sunlight. They were a stark contrast to the sterile environment of the hospital, their vibrant yellow a burst of life I had almost forgotten. A note attached read simply, "For Clara. From someone who believes." Who had gifted this? I turned to Rosa, who was at her cart nearby, her eyes crinkling with a knowing smile. "Sometimes kindness blooms in unexpected places," she said, her voice soft but resonant. "You might need to hold on to that." In that moment, I let the warmth of hope seep into me. Clara's friends were still reaching out, spreading seeds of love and encouragement even in her absence. They didn't abandon her, they believed, just as Rosa did. Perhaps I wasn't entirely alone in this fight, this heartbreaking wait, but the following day, the cycle of hope was challenged once again. I stepped into Clara's room and froze. Her doctor, a stoic man with weary eyes, stood solemnly at her bedside. The starkness of his gaze betrayed a sense of dread that gripped my heart like a vice. "We need to discuss Clara's condition," he said deeply, his voice heavy with gravity. An unseen storm brewed behind those words. "What do you mean?" My pulse quickened. I could hardly breathe as he sat down across from me, his sincerity piercing through the fragile veil of hope I'd managed to weave. He cleared his throat. "We've run tests. I'm afraid her brain activity has diminished further. It's becoming increasingly unlikely she'll awaken." Before he finished, the beeping monitors droned, a haunting dirge echoing the fractured world I had just begun to believe might heal. My world shattered around me, and with it, the fragile threads of hope Rosa and the flowers had spun. As the doctor's words pressed on, drowning out the lingering light from the daisies, Clara's heart rate began to rise again, the machines whirring in a discordant alarm. It surged unpredictably, mirroring the chaos inside me. Overwhelmed, I stared at Clara, all my dreams for her hanging by a thread. Suddenly, her hand twitched, ever so slightly. My breath hitched in my throat. Was I imagining it? Was this the signal I had been waiting for, or was it simply a figment crafted by a heart desperate not to let go? The doctor turned abruptly, his face a mask of confusion. "What's happening?" His clinical detachment began to melt as he rushed back to the machines. "Clara." I called out, my voice cracking, caught between hope and despair, teetering on the brink of belief and fear. Would I lose her forever if I dared to hope once more? As the monitor continued to beep and hiss, I held my breath, torn between the threads of reality and my fleeting dream of a miracle. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting a sterile glow over the chaos that had ensnared my spirit. I stood at Clara's bedside, my heart hammering against my ribs, driven mad by the ceaseless beeping of the machines. The doctor's eyes darted between the monitors, trying to reassure me with scientific jargon I could no longer comprehend. "Her vitals are stabilizing, but we must remain cautious," he said, his voice tinged with uncertainty. I clung to those words like a lifeline thrown into stormy seas, even if they felt deceptively hollow. "Clara, please," I whispered, desperate. "If you can hear me, squeeze my hand again." I imagined the warmth of her small fingers wrapping around mine, the way she had always looked up at me with faith that I could conquer the world for her. The silence swelled, heavy and suffocating. My heart sank when I felt no response, just the emptiness of the hospital room echoing back at me, but then, after what seemed an eternity, that tender flicker of hope ignited once more. Her fingers stirred. Was it real? The moment was fleeting, nothing more than muscle memory perhaps. Clara's heart rate quickened, and I felt a mixture of dread and exhilaration constricting my lungs. The doctor's brows knitted together, and he leaned in closer, the weight of his scrutiny making me anxious. "Keep talking to her," he said, almost as an afterthought, as if he recalled some protocol for encouraging responses in comatose patients. But what if my words were powerless? I wanted to scream, to demand the universe to grant us a reprieve, to allow her to awaken and return to the life she deserved. As the hours trickled on and evening descended, I refused to leave her side. The room filled with echoes of mechanical bleeps, punctuated only by the distant murmur of nurses and doctors outside. I clung to the daisies, now wilting but still radiating a warmth that countered the chill of despair. Rosa, a steadfast guardian of hope, had woven her kindness into the fabric of my grief and offered me a respite filled with fragile dreams, but a new figure entered the picture as I sat there, lost in my thoughts. A man wearing a baseball cap tilted back on his head and a t-shirt sporting a local high school's mascot. He entered with an air of uncertainty, glancing at Clara and then back at me, almost like he wasn't sure he belonged there. Hi," he stammered. "I'm Jake. I'm one of Clara's classmates. I wanted to check on her." I blinked, astonished by the tenderness behind this unexpected visitor's eyes. "You know her?" "Oh yeah," he said, stepping closer. "We were in Ms. Parker's art class together. She always painted these amazing pieces. I still remember the mural she painted in the hallway. It was so bright, so full of life that I didn't know you were close," I managed, feeling the sands of time shift as stories of Clara's laughter brushed up against my fractured heart. "She's not just a classmate. She's my friend. I couldn't just stay away." His vulnerability cracked open something inside me, and I suddenly understood what Rosa had meant about kindness blooming in unexpected places. Jake took a seat next to me, his eyes still glued to Clara's pale form. I remember that day in the park, when we went for ice cream after the art show. She talked about her dreams, about wanting to travel and paint the world. She inspired so many people. My throat tightened, a flood of grief washing over me anew. "She's fighting, I can feel it," I said, more to convince myself than him. "I believe she's still in there." "I believe that too," Jake said earnestly. "She was always the one telling me and the others to keep pushing, to keep dreaming." Suddenly, the monitor let out a series of sharp beeps, rising like a wave. My heart plummeted, the air around us thickened with dread. Both of us leaned in, fear pooling in our stomachs, every second stretching into an eternity. But then, as if hearing our prayers whispered into the dark, Clara's fingers moved again. A twitch, a slight squeeze, but it was unmistakable. My breath caught in my chest. I turned to Jake, whose eyes reflected the miracle we dared not believe in just moments ago. "Did you see that?" I gasped, tears springing to my eyes. "Yeah," he said, grinning with disbelief. "That was real. Clara, come back to us." I clutched Clara's hand tighter, a connection that felt electric. "Keep going, Clara. We're right here. Just keep fighting." I could hardly contain my exhilaration bursting at the seams of my heart, but as hope swirled around us, a shadow lingered on the precipice of our victory. The doctor returned, but he wasn't alone. Another figure in a crisp suit accompanied him, someone I hadn't expected to see. An unfamiliar man whose presence radiated authority and dread. As I looked between them, a harrowing realization crept back into the light of my moment of joy. The doctor's eyes were filled with an unspeakable heaviness, and the stranger's gaze swept over Clara with an unsettling intensity. "Mrs. Jensen," the well-dressed man said with a tone that chilled me to the bone. "We need to discuss your daughter's status in light of the recent changes." I felt the room sway around me. "What do you mean?" I stammered, fear coursing through my veins. "It's about her medical care," the man continued, and just like that, the delicate threads of hope began to fray, eclipsed by the new storm brewing on the horizon. Desperation clawed at me. I had been so close to a miracle. But it felt as if every moment I fought back against despair, the universe conspired to pull me back into the abyss. In a world tinged with hope, shadows loomed larger than ever before. The tension in the room thickened like the sterile air, and I could feel the blood rush in my ears. The man in the suit, with his pressed lapels and unreadable expression, had thrust an icy wrench into the fragile machinery of my hope. My gaze darted between Clara, still so small and vulnerable, and the stern features of the man who stood between us and the light we so desperately sought. "Her status?" I echoed, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "What are you talking about?" She moved. "She's fighting." Dr. Harrison, who had been a beacon thus far, shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Jensen, we need to evaluate the efficacy of Clara's treatment regimen given her condition. Funds have become an issue, and we must consider alternatives." The word felt like venom. "You're not saying," my voice broke, a dam of fear and anguish flooding my heart as I connected the dots. "You want to what?" "Limit her care, please. Let's discuss this calmly," the unfamiliar man instructed, leaning forward slightly, the authority in his voice scraping against the edges of my despair. "Clara's medical bills are accumulating, and funding for her care presents challenges not just for this facility but for you as well. We must explore options that are more viable." I tore my gaze away from him, unwilling to let his words wrap around my soul like a serpent. "More viable?" I spat the phrase like a curse. "You don't understand. Clara is more than a bill. She's my daughter." Jake watched me, his eyes wide with sympathy, yet unsure of how to intervene. I could feel his presence, a gentle touch in this tempest of grief, but his helplessness stung more than the man's callous suggestion. "What do you propose, then?" I demanded, locking onto the stranger's gaze. "Do you expect me to give up? To let them stop her treatment?" "There are protocols to follow, Mrs. Jensen," he replied, his voice devoid of empathy. "And if her condition does not improve significantly." Another surge of panicked energy ricocheted inside me, and I leaped to my feet. "You mean if she doesn't wake up on your timeline, you'll just decide her life is worth less? Just like that?" My voice was rising, fragile vulnerability hardening into unyielding anger. "You don't get to play God with her life." Dr. Harrison placed a calming hand onto my shoulder, his sincerity a small comfort against the tidal wave of despair. "Let's not escalate things. We can talk to the financial department about the available resources or find a solution that works for everyone involved." The well-dressed man nodded, a glimmer of agreement in his eyes, but it felt insincere, merely lip service offered to pacify my outburst. "I assure you, Mrs. Jensen, our priority is Clara and her recovery. But sometimes, harsh realities must be faced, harsh realities. How was it fair that the system we trusted to save her was now threatening to abandon her?" Despair coiled around my heart, squeezing tighter as I fought to breathe. I abandoned myself to the hopelessness, every breath feeling heavier, every heartbeat a reminder of the relentless clock that ticked above us, but in my darkest moment, the faint echo of a soft voice broke through the haze. A cleaning lady, who had come and gone during my vigil, stood unattended in the doorway. In her hands, she clutched a small tattered notebook, a random piece of paper with faded edges. "Excuse me," she said softly, hesitation coating her words. "I was just cleaning up, and I heard you talking. Is everything okay?" The worry etched across her forehead exuded a genuine warmth, an unexpected kindness in a room so chaotic and cold. "It's not okay," I said, tears blurring my vision. "They're talking about taking Clara off life support if her condition doesn't change." "Oh," she replied gently, nodding with understanding. "I was just thinking maybe I could share something." She stepped closer, her gaze softening. "I've seen miracles happen. I've seen hope in the darkest places. This helped me when my own daughter was sick. With trembling hands, she opened her notebook to reveal a worn page filled with hastily scribbled prayers and heartfelt affirmations. These are things I wrote when I thought I was losing everything. Prayers that brought light into my darkest days. That I stared at her as if her words were a lifeline tossed into the stormy sea of my despair. You believe in miracles. I don't just believe, she said with a fierce sincerity. I've witnessed them. Keep the faith. Take this. She held out the page, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Read it to her. You never know what she might hear. As I accepted the paper, something shifted inside me, a small flicker of warmth igniting against the suffocating darkness. The doubts that had clawed at the edges of my mind began to ease, if only just. But the stranger remained, a heavy weight looming in the room. He cleared his throat, breaking the momentary spell. Mrs. Jensen, we need your decision promptly. The clock is ticking. As I stood there, the paper clasped tightly in my hands, I felt like I was standing at the edge of a precipice. Would I bend to this cruel ultimatum, or would I fight tooth and nail for Clara? My heart swirled with uncertainty, yet I could feel that flicker of hope from the cleaning lady's prayer starting to warm the cockles of my spirit. But just as I opened my mouth to answer, Clara's monitor erupted with a flurry of alarms, the sound a bone-chilling wail that shattered the fragile moment, and I could only look helplessly toward my daughter, as the tortured beeping clawed away at the foundation of hope I had just begun to grasp. The alarms echoed through the sterile room like a symphony of chaos, drowning out my thoughts and suffocating the small ember of hope the cleaning lady had ignited. Panic surged through me as I turned toward Clara, heart pounding in my chest. The screen, usually a quiet rhythm of reassurance, blared with frenetic urgency, demanding immediate attention. Dr. Harrison sprang into action, his previous calm evaporating as he barked orders for nurses. I stood frozen, my world narrowing down to the sight of Clara, me darling girl, so still, so fragile, ensnarled in a web of machines and wires. A floor nurse rushed past me, leaving a trail of murmured technical jargon that sounded foreign and frightening. Please, God, no, I whispered, a silent plea falling from my lips as I stepped closer to Clara's bedside, desperate to connect with her, to will her to wake up. But as the commotion swirled around me, I felt the weight of helplessness settling like a shroud. What's happening? I gasped, grabbing Dr. Harrison's coat as he flew past. Is she? There's a fluctuation in her vitals. We're going to stabilize her, he responded, but his expression flickered with something I couldn't decipher. Concern, perhaps? Or was it resignation? I couldn't bear the thought that he might not believe she would pull through. In the midst of the turmoil, I caught a glimpse of the cleaning lattice eyes, filled with empathetic understanding. She hadn't retreated, she stood at the edge of the chaos, her hands clasped tightly, as if she, too, was holding on to a prayer of her own. At that moment, she was no longer just a stranger, she was woven into this tapestry of love and desperation, her presence a balm against my fears. That I turned back to Clara, gripping the notebook tightly in my hands. You can hear me, baby, I said, my voice trembling. Fight for me, fight for us. Remember the things we talked about. Remember how brave you are. As I spoke, the alarms began to soften. I took a steadying breath, the ink of the healing words from that notebook blurring in my vision, but their essence ringing clear in my mind. Miracles, faith, and love, all things I thought I'd lost. You are not alone, I murmured, feeling the warmth of the cleaning lattice spirit radiate through me. You're surrounded by so much love, Clara, so much hope. Please come back to us. The nurses worked around me, and though I felt like an intruder in their world, I kept my eyes locked onto Clara's face, still and pale. It felt like an eternity of pleading before I heard a small, flurry of chaotic beeping subside, and Dr. Harrison leaned back, breathing visibly lighter. She's stabilized for now, he said, and I dared a tentative smile, though fear still loomed like a fading shadow. But before I could exhale my relief, the suited man cleared his throat, his presence unwelcome as ever. This changes nothing, Mrs. Jensen. We need a decision about her treatments. We can't indefinitely support a patient without a clear path forward. Frustration ignited within me, a fire fueled by the aftermath of that emergency. You can't expect me to decide in a moment like this. Do you have any idea what it's like to stand at the brink of losing your child while still being asked to think about finances? That is the reality you face, he replied unflinchingly, but there was something thin in his voice, a slight crack beneath the surface that hinted at his own discomfort. Do you have children? I demanded, locking my eyes onto his, searching for a shred of humanity. If this was your daughter, would you just give up? He paused, an almost imperceptible wariness in his posture. Any parent would do anything to save their child, he began carefully. But the system, screw the system. I shouted, my voice rising. You can't put a price tag on a life. You don't get to remove options like Clara isn't worth it. For the first time, I saw the glimmer of something in his eyes, a flicker of doubt, perhaps. But instead of letting it grow, he shifted back into his authoritative facade. In providing options, Mrs. Jensen. It's not my role to be emotional. That would cloud judgment. I laughed bitterly, every ounce of rage bubbling to the surface. This isn't judgment, it's heartlessness. Before he could respond, a hushed voice broke through. The floor nurse, clutching a clipboard, interrupted us. Excuse me, but the board has made some adjustments to the funding, given the unexpected stabilization of Clara's condition. We might be able to explore new avenues without hastening any decisions just yet. My heart soared, filled with a glimmer of hope. Was it possible? In a world twisted with red tape and harsh realities, could we fight to give Clara a chance, new avenues? I echoed, watching the suit's face pale slightly. Yes, if Clara shows improvement, we can reassess her treatment plan in coming weeks. It wouldn't be a full guarantee, but it's something, she said anxiously, still eyeing the man in the suit, whose expression had turned grim. The look he shot us could have melted ice. This is hardly a commitment, he warned, a dark heaviness descending over the space where hope had flared. That's all we need, I whispered, feeling as if I were teetering on the edge of a chasm. Just a fighting chance. Just as a flicker of defiance ignited within me, a sudden beep broke the tension, a solitary, steady note that cut through the confusion and chaos of both hope and despair. Turning back to Clara, something felt different as I leaned in, my breath hitching. And then, amidst the sharp, constantly buzzing sound, I saw her fingers twitch. My heart stopped, an exhalation of disbelief ripping out of my lungs as my mind struggled to grasp the reality of the moment. Clara? The word escaped me like a prayer soaring into the night. Hope surged strong and fierce, but what if it was merely a fleeting flicker? What if the darkness was still lurking? The man in the suit glanced at the monitors, then at Dr. Harrison, the hard edge of his expression softening for the briefest moment before I broke from my stupor. Please, God, let this be real, I murmured, clutching the notebook harder as I awaited Clara's response. Would this small sign of life be the miracle I had longed for, or merely another shard of hope extinguished too soon? The question hung in the air like the fragile thread of not just Clara's fate, but our future, dangling over an abyss of uncertainty. The room pulsed with a mixture of urgency and stillness, the silence thickening around me as Clara's fingers twitched again, and my heart raced in tandem. The beeping of the machines transformed into a symphony, a hopeful rhythm underscoring the fragile line between despair and possibility. Clara, please, I said, my voice cracking, it's Mom. Can you hear me? Just give me a sign. To my astonishment, her eyes fluttered. I leaned closer, breath hitching in my throat as I searched her face, praying for any flicker of her light to re-emerge. But just as quickly as it came, her eyelids fell closed again, and I felt my heart plummet to my stomach. Darkness creeping back in. The nurses, monitoring the screens, began to exchange glances filled with a mix of cautious hope and professional detachment. Dr. Harrison moved to the foot of the bed, his brow furrowing as he studied the readings. This may just be a reflex, he cautioned, though I could hear the edge of disbelief in his tone. Reflex or not, I managed, swallowing the bitter taste of fear. It's a sign. It has to be. I gripped the notebook tighter, clinging to the echo of my words, the power of miracles I had spoken of before. the cleaning lady lingered at the door, her presence a balm amidst the fluctuating emotions swirling around me. She stepped inside, a slight smile curving her lips, her hands folded gently in front of her, an unwavering reminder of quiet resilience. "Hope is a powerful thing," she murmured softly, her voice a soothing melody breaking through the din. "Sometimes, we have to fight through the shadows to find our light." That I wanted to believe her, to let hope wrap around me like a warm blanket. But as I watched Clara, the shadows loomed larger, twisting in my heart as an insidious whisper raked through my mind. What if this small sign turned out to be a false dawn? What if I was grasping at something that would slip away as quickly as it had come? "Can you do anything more?" I asked Dr. Harrison, desperation rising like bile in my throat. "Please, don't let this be all we have." "Right now, Mrs. Jensen, we're doing everything we can," he replied, his voice steady and professional. "But this could take time. She needs to stabilize completely. We can't rush the process. More than that, we need more positive signs before changing her treatment plan." And just like that, the weight of reality crashed back onto me, heavier than before. Though Clara had shown a glimpse of life, the uncertainty of her condition still loomed ominously. The suit shifted uncomfortably, and I caught a glimpse of something human in his gaze, a fleeting moment that urged me to press harder. "Why do you do this?" I challenged, my voice imbued with defiance. "What will make you reconsider? Does it take a miracle to see that Clara is so much more than a diagnosis or a statistic?" His expression hardened again, the chasm between us widening. "This isn't personal, it's protocol. I'm a messenger of decisions made by those who are far removed from this walk of life. They don't see faces, they see numbers, but she is a face," I insisted, tears threatening to spill as fear mingled with anger. "And each one of those numbers represents a life, a family, and dreams waiting to unfold." The cleaning lady stepped closer to me, as if to bolster my resolve with her quiet strength. "Miracles, too, often come from those who dare to believe," she said softly. "They're not handed down from above sometimes, they emerge from the depths of our struggles. Don't lose faith, dear." As the tension hung palpable in the air, I felt my resolve deepening. "We're not giving up. I won't let you treat Clara like she's not worth fighting for because we're in the wrong financial bracket." The words erupted from a place deep within, an unyielding defiance fueled not just by my love for my daughter but also by the recognition of Clara's spirit, the strength that had always swirled within her. The man in the suit remained quiet, and for a brief moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. But just as quickly, he straightened his shoulders and faced me with the kind of cool indifference I had come to expect. "These discussions can wait, but her needs can't. You need to advocate for her care based on what you believe is best, a decision based on possibilities, not wishful thinking." The words hit me like a gavel, hard, unsettling, and final. But in the midst of that growing fear, I spotted Clara's hand again, this time almost imperceptibly moving ever so slightly. The memory of her laughter and sparkle surged through me like a tempest. "Clara, you have to fight," I rasped, fingers brushing against her cool skin. "Please come back to me. I can't lose you." And then, in a moment fraught with quiet intensity, Clara's eyelids fluttered open just a crack. Deep brown orbs, though clouded, met my gaze with a flicker of awareness. "Mom," she whispered, her voice barely a breath, hovering between life and dream. My world tilted with disbelief, and I leaned in closer, breathless. "I'm here, Clara. I'm right here," I breathed, hope igniting with fervor. "You're safe. You've come back to us." But then, almost imperceptibly, I noticed the heart monitor's steady rhythm was faltering once again, the alarms flaring back to Liffy, a cruel reminder that her journey was far from over, that darkness still lurked in the corners of our reality. The man in the suit stepped closer, a mix of disbelief and concern written across his face. I felt myself dangle over the precipice of uncertainty. "We need to stabilize her now," Dr. Harrison barked, now fully engaged as urgency spread through the room, and as they rushed around us, panic swelled once more in my chest. Could Clara withstand another storm? Would this fragile moment of connection be snatched away as swiftly as it had come? The weight of everything I had fought for hung precariously in the Balancian emotional cliffhanger that threatened to plunge us into depths unknown, leaving me to wonder exactly how far I was willing to go to save her. The fluorescent lights overhead throbbed with an unsettling clarity, illuminating the stark white of the hospital room that had become my reluctant sanctuary. I felt the desperation clawing at my throat as Clara's eyelids slowly lowered again, almost as if she were slipping back into the abyss just when hope had begun to bloom. The monitors, now a chorus of urgency, echoed my dread. Each blip and beep reminded me of the fragile life teetering on the edge. "Clara, don't you dare leave me," I whispered fiercely, gripping her hand tighter. "You're stronger than this." "I know you are." The nurses worked diligently, their focus unwavering, but I noticed the shifting glances they exchanged, the way their bodies tensed as alarms pulsed around us. Panic swelled deep inside, intertwining with an unyielding love that seared like acid. Days had stretched into nights, and the hours blurred the remorseless rhythm of this place, sapping my strength but igniting a flame just beneath the surface. "Kathy." The delicate voice of a family friend broke through the haze, and I turned to find Miranda standing at the doorway, her wide-eyed concern morphing into something deeper as she stepped cautiously inside. She'd been my steadfast lifeline through this ordeal, but even she, with all her comforting words and well-meaning intentions, couldn't dispel the suffocating fear that clung to me. "Miranda," I breathed, feeling a flicker of warmth within the storm. "It's so precarious." She was awake, and now, "I know," she said, crossing the floor quickly to my side, her touch a gentle anchor amid the chaos. "But I'm here for you. Whatever you need." "I need her to fight," I confessed, my voice cracking. "I need to see her light again, to know we aren't losing her." The cleaning lady appeared then, slipping silently into the room with a demeanor that radiated peace even in this whirlwind. She approached Clara's bedside, a quiet strength emanating from her every step. I marveled at how she wore hope like a garment, her presence a soothing balm amidst the turmoil. "May I?" she asked, gesturing toward Clara's hand. I nodded, entrusting her with a tiny piece of my heart. As she held Clara's hand, the cleaning lady closed her eyes. "Sometimes, what we need is to reach deeper into our prayers," she murmured softly, her voice weaving through the chaos like a gentle breeze. "We demand strength when we are weak, we beg for miracles when we are lost." Miranda and I exchanged glances, a mix of skepticism and awe coursing through us. I felt the atmosphere shift, as if the lattice words had created a pocket of tranquility amidst the deafening alarms and frantic movement. The room dimmed in comparison to her light. "Will she hear you?" I found myself asking, an unintentional desperation slipping into my voice. "Will she listen?" The cleaning lattice eyes fluttered open, a knowing warmth pooling within. "Her spirit is alive within these walls. It's strong. Just like yours." With that, she whispered a prayer that I couldn't hear, the rhythm of her words carrying weight that felt tangible, like the warmth of sunlight breaking through a storm. Despite the unreality of it all, I felt the strands of my heart pulling together, thread by thread. Watching this stranger cradle my daughter's hand in a dance with faith ignited something within me. I yearned for that kind of belief, something I had so easily questioned in recent days, but my hope wavered as the alarm blared again, sharper this time, slicing through the fragile moment we were all sharing. I stumbled back into the whirlwind of medical urgency. "Dr. Harrison," I cried, the bitterness of frustration bubbling towards the surface once more. "You need to do something. Everyone, step back. We need to stabilize her now." His voice cut through my anxiety as they shifted quickly, tending to my girl with the practiced hands of professionals who had seen too much life and death. In that desperate moment, I felt the chilling grip of fear squeezing my heart, twisting tighter. What if their efforts were not enough this time? What if the flicker of life I had just glimpsed in Clara's eyes was to be extinguished before my very own? I turned back to the cleaning lady, searching her eyes for any sign of reassurance. She simply stood there, hands clasped, whispering her prayer with an unwavering resolve, as if the sound itself could summon miracles. A part of me craved that kind of power to conjure something out of nothing, a lifeline in the form of hope. Suddenly, Clara's heart rate dipped swiftly, a chilling descent that stole the breath from my lungs. I wanted to scream, to rally for her, to plead for a miracle out loud, but all that escaped was a choked sob that reverberated in the stark silence of my despair. At that moment, the door swung open, and in rushed a group of doctors, their faces a symphony of intensity. They moved quickly, navigating around my own turmoil, and my heart sank lower with each passing second. Then, as I stood paralyzed by the fear tightening its grip around my throat, the unexpected happened. Clara's fingers twitched again, this time, more decidedly. Like a missed heartbeat returning to rhythm, clarity and strength radiated from that small movement. My heart soared for a split second, but it quickly sank as I noticed something else: a pulse of energy swirling around the cleaning lady, a warmth that seemed to alter the energy of the room. She opened her eyes, fixing her gaze on me, and I swore I felt a resonance between us, some kind of unspoken bond in this shared despair. "Keep believing," she whispered, and those words sank deep into my heart, igniting an ember of conviction I didn't know I was losing sight of. But just as I felt this renewal of faith clawing its way back, Clara's monitor blared ominously again, spiking sharply with every flicker of her movement. "Her heart needs to stabilize," Dr. Harrison shouted, urgency ricocheting off the walls, and I sensed my world tremoring with uncertainty. I lowered my voice, almost pleading, yet fiercely protective. "Clara," I begged into the void of her consciousness, "don't leave me. You were fighting. You have to keep fighting." But as Clara's heart rate began to oscillate erratically, and the nurses scrambled around me again, I was left teetering at the edge of despair, gripped by the realization that that spark of life, that sign of hope, was still so dangerously close to slipping away. Then, out of the void of uncertainty, an unexpected figure emerged from the corner. An older man in plaid was entering the room, his expression somber yet fiery, and I felt a flicker of recognition hit me as he stepped forward, clutching a worn leather journal tightly in his hands, and his voice rumbled like thunder as he declared, "I've seen what she can do. I have something she needs." And just like that, with those few words resonating in the chaos, my heart began to race with both anticipation and dread. What could this man possibly know that would change everything? In a place consumed by fear, it was the promise of both a revelation and a storm yet to come. The lights flickered ominously above as I stood on the precipice of hope and despair, each pulse of Clara's heart a reminder of the fragility of our existence. I turned in the direction of the newcomer, my heart thundering against my ribcage like a warning bell. The man was older, weathered by time, but his eyes held a fierce determination, reminiscent of a warrior charged with a sacred mission. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely rising above the cacophony of alarms and hurried footsteps that he shifted, his hands clutching the journal tighter, as if it contained the very essence of the universe. "My name is Arthur," he said, his voice a low rumble, "and I've been waiting for an opportunity to tell Clara about the magic of belief." He gestured towards the bed like an artist revealing a work of art, his gaze fixated on my daughter. "I've seen miracles delivered alongside sorrow. Your daughter has a light in her that I once thought snuffed out." That I felt a flicker of skepticism beneath the surface of my turmoil. "Miracles?" I asked, half in disbelief, half in desperate yearning. "What do you know about my daughter? She has touched the lives of many," he replied, stepping forward with a gentle grace that belied the intensity of his words. "There are stories scattered like seeds across this hospital. Yours is just one of them, but it is the one that needs nurturing right now." "Stories?" Miranda echoed, looking between Arthur and me. "What do you mean?" Arthur opened the journal slowly, revealing pages filled with handwritten notes and sketches, visions blooming like flowers in their fragility. "Clara's story is intertwined with the stories of others who have faced their own battles. This journal is not just filled with words, it's a chronicle of hope. Each entry is a testament to the power of belief, something that can transcend even the darkest moments." Tears threatened to spill over as I glanced back at Clara, her stillness both alien and achingly familiar. The scent of antiseptic hung heavily in the air, and I felt suffocated by the weight of what lay before me, but the warmth of hope and the cold grip of uncertainty. "Tell me," I urged Arthur, my heart racing as I clung to this unexpected lifeline. "How do I make her fight? How do I pull her back from the brink?" Arthur's eyes glittered with a profound understanding, as though he alone could see the threads of fate intertwining around us. Sometimes, it begins with a single truth, a belief wrapped in love. Tell her what she means to you, not just what she has done, but who she truly is. Plant the seeds of faith in her ears. Speak to her spirit. That I hesitated, the weight of his request too daunting. What could I possibly say that would resonate amidst the chaos within her? But even as doubt crept alongside me, I understood the enormity of the path laid before me. Closing my eyes, I took a deep breath, expelling the fear that had been woven into the very fabric of my being. I leaned closer to Clara's bedside, desperate to bridge the chasm of silence that lay between us. "Clara," I murmured, allowing my voice to quaver with the weight of my emotion. "You are the brightest light in my life. You make the mundane extraordinary, with laughter that dances like sunlight across the darkest corners. Remember your dreams, those swirling hopes held tightly in your heart. You have painted worlds with your imagination, each stroke teeming with color. You've always fought with the strength of a lion, and I need that lion back. You are more than just my daughter, you are a miracle waiting to erupt back into our lives." The monitors beeped gently in the aftermath of my confession, and I felt a tremor pass suddenly through my hand, gripping hers as I searched for a sign, a flicker, anything that would tell me my words resonated. But there was silence. Just then, Clara's fingers moved again, twitched almost imperceptibly under the weight of my fervent gaze. It was enough to spark a flicker of hope in my heart, a small ember of belief igniting against the overwhelming dread. "I believe in you," I continued, finding strength within the vulnerability of the moment. "You have the power to rise. Don't let this world take you from us, Clara. We need you to come back. We need to know your laughter can fill our home once more, that you can take on the world." As I clung to her hand, feeling a connection that transcended beyond the physical, Arthur moved closer. He opened the journal and began to read, his voice low and soothing. The words flowed like a river, gentle and unyielding, wrapping around us like a shroud. It was a story of resilience, recounting how despair had once been transformed into hope. The quiet power in his voice became a subtle anthem, as if words alone could sculpt reality beneath the sterile lights of the hospital. The cleaning lady, who seemed to have withdrawn into the background, nodded, her eyes glistening wet with unshed tears, as if recognizing that we were all inextricably linked in this dance of faith. But just as I began to feel a swell of warmth in my chest, an urgent beeping shattered the air. Clara's heart rate dipped again, and panic seized me. "No. Please." I cried out, the raw panic bleeding into my voice. "Don't do this." Dr. Harrison rushed to Clara's side, and the world around me warped into a blur of frantic movement. The nurses rallied again, their faces masks of concentration, while Arthur and Miranda lingered close by, their expressions a landscape of worry. "Step back," a nurse ordered, and I found myself shrinking back against the wall, helpless. In that moment, my hope ignited like a fragile candle desperate against the wind, and I could only watch as the doctors fought against time, my daughter's fragile life hanging in the balance. Then, just as I thought all was lost, Clara's eyes fluttered slightly beneath her closed lids, and an almost imperceptible sigh escaped her lips. "Clara?" I gasped, leaning in closer. But then the door swung open again, and an unexpected figure strode into the room, an older woman with silver hair, her very presence radiating warmth like a hearth in winter. She carried an air of wisdom, and the moment she stepped in, the room shifted ever so slightly, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. "That I have been looking for you," she said, locking eyes with me. "And for Clara." My breath caught as the unexpected chill of dread washed over me. Who was this woman? What connection did she have to my daughter? And as the chaos unfolded around us, I could only hope that she held an answer to the mounting questions swirling darkly in my mind, an answer that might finally unveil the miracles we so desperately sought. The woman stepped further into the room, a beacon of calm amidst the whirlwind of urgency surrounding Clara's bed. Her eyes were deep and wise, holding stories that had long since settled into the lines of her face. "I am Miriam," she announced, her voice softly resonating like a soothing melody, drawing attention to herself even in the midst of chaos. "Why are you here?" I managed to choke out, my heart still racing with fear for Clara. "What do you know about her?" Miriam took a moment, her gaze flickering briefly to Clara before settling on me. "I am here because I have witnessed the light that Clara carries." I've seen her smile radiate hope even in the smallest of moments. I've heard about her laughter echoing through these hallways, touching the hearts of those who cross her path, including mine. At her words, the air in the room shifted. It was as if the collective breath we all held had found its release, an intermission in the chaos for a moment of connection. "What do you want?" I asked again, a tremor lacing my voice as the urgency of the situation bore down upon me like a heavy weight. "That I want to share a secret," Miriam replied, her gaze unwavering as she reached into the folds of her robe. "But it is one that requires trust." She pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden box, cradling it delicately in her hands as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Arthur's brow furrowed in curiosity, his earlier conviction now mingled with uncertainty. "What's in the box?" he questioned, stepping closer, curiosity overpowering concern. "This box contains the prayers and wishes of those who have come and gone through this hospital," Miriam explained, her voice low and rhythmic, almost entrancing. "Each prayer is an offer of hope, an expression of belief that can uplift even the most fragile of spirits." That I took a hesitant step forward, the words swirling around my mind. "And Clara, can this help her?" Miriam nodded, her expression serious yet gentle. "Belief is a powerful force, often underestimated. If we allow Clara's spirit to absorb the hope within these prayers, it might just reignite her will to fight." As she opened the box, the warm glow of flickering candles inside illuminated her face, and a delicate fragrance wafted through the air. It was the scent of something pure, almost an ethereal balm that softened the harshness of the hospital walls. "Who are the prayers for?" asked Miranda, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and skepticism. "There are names etched into the paper, stories just like Clara's," Miriam replied. "Some who've won their battles, others who've moved on. Each prayer is a testament to resilience." She reached for a prayer slip, crinkled and worn with the weight of countless hearts behind it. Holding it out to me, she continued, "Will you share it with her? Let it flow from your heart, expressing what you feel so deeply." My hesitation lingered, fear seeping into my veins. What if my words were too weak, too inadequate to convey at this moment? Jerry and Miranda watched me with hopeful anticipation, their expressions a mix of trust and uncertainty. I couldn't let them down. I took the slip, my fingers grazing over the words inscribed there, and drew a deep breath, grounding myself amidst the chaos. I leaned closer to Clara, my heart racing with the overwhelming need to reach her. "Clara, listen to this," I whispered, my voice low yet fervent. "These are the prayers of those who have loved fiercely." I began to read, the words flowing through me like a river of emotion. I translated the hopes and dreams of others, weaving them into the fabric of my own plea, forging a connection between Clara and a collective spirit yearning for healing. I pictured Clara fighting back, harnessing that very light Miriam mentioned, wrapping it around her like armor against the storm. However, as I continued, I noticed something unsettling, a growing disquiet in the room. The lights flickered more violently now, shadows twisting across the walls like darkened whispers. The monitors started beeping erratically. Clara's heart rate dipped again. No. Not again. I cried. Panic clawing at my throat as I locked eyes with the nurses hustling by. My heart raced with a visceral fear that threatened to choke me. "What's happening?" I pleaded, my voice breaking as the medical team rushed to Clara's side. Miriam stepped closer, her expression intent and focused, her hands steady. "Hold on to the belief, no matter the turmoil. Your hope is the anchor, it leads her back," she urged, her voice laced with a pleading determination. But even as the words left her lips, Clara's body began to tremble violently, and my breath caught in my throat. "Clara! Fight!" I screamed, my voice rising above the noise, desperation flooding my senses. Just as the chaos seemed to reach its unbearable peak, Clara's eyes snapped open wide, startled, and filled with an unfathomable depth. She flailed slightly, and for a terrifying moment, it felt as if we were locked in an unrelenting battle against time itself. But then, to my astonishment, her gaze turned towards Miriam, locking onto her with an intense lucidity. Clara's lips parted to form words that barely whispered through the chaos. "Who are you?" In that fragile moment, the world around us fell away, and I realized this was not just about Clara anymore. The walls of reason and despair twisted, revealing a connection that ran deeper than I had ever imagined. There, amongst the swirling emotions and desperation, a shocking revelation wrestled within my heart. The source of Clara's struggle was tied to something significant that tethered her to Miriam, a thread woven through her very essence, and in that instant, I understood that our journey was far from over. Just as hope flickered, a far darker truth loomed on the horizon, more ominous than I could have ever anticipated. My heart raced as I stood there, the room a kaleidoscope of fear and unyielding hope. Clara's eyes flickered with recognition, and it was as though the world around us held its breath. "Who are you?" she whispered again, her voice barely audible but filled with a haunting resonance that echoed within me. Miriam stepped forward with a grace that seemed to illuminate the very air around us. "I am someone who believes in you, Clara," she replied, her voice a soothing balm against the sharp edges of panic. "I've watched you dance through life, leaving traces of light wherever you've gone. Each moment you shared, each smile, they all made ripples in the world around you." The rhythm of the machine shifted, Clara's eyes widening in confusion as if grappling with memories that danced just out of reach, but I could see the flicker of recognition igniting within her. "I remember," she murmured, her brow furrowing as if she were piecing together a puzzle. You were there." "I was," Miriam affirmed with a soft smile, a twinge of warmth seeping into the cold confines of the hospital room. "You've inspired so many, and now it's time for you to inspire yourself." As she spoke, I felt a current of something so profound and tangible, words spiraling around us like a sacred thread binding our spirits. But as the moment unfolded, the oppressive weight of reality pressed in from all directions. The machines around Clara began to beep erratically once more, drowning out the soft sparks of hope that had ignited in my chest. Panic surged within me, clawing at my insides, a relentless reminder that fragility underpinned our existence. "Stay with us, Clara. Please. Fight." I cried, my voice rising as the desperate plea echoed off the sterile walls. The atmosphere grew thick with tension, and I felt powerless as the medical staff filled the space around Clara, their expressions a mix of determination and concern. "Dr. Harris," I began, but the urgency in the room absorbed everything. Clara's heart rate raced as she writhed beneath the blankets, each tremor threatening to pull her back into the abyss. The nurses moved with swift efficiency, and I stood there, paralyzed, wanting to make sense of this storm. "Clara, listen to me." My voice was hoarse as I leaned closer, grasping her hand tightly in mine, trying to pull her away from the relentless shadows closing in. "You are not alone. You have a life waiting for you. Think of the paintings you wanted to create, the dreams you nurtured. We need you. I need you." The connection surged between us. I wove my memories with hers, pleading with every ounce of my being. In that instant, as the bed trembled beneath Clara's escalating distress, I caught Miriam's eyes. There was an understanding, a shared urgency lighting a fire between us. "Clara," hear her voice. "Your art, your love, they matter," Miriam urged, resonating with the collective spirit of our fear and resolve. Miriam turned her gaze to me, a knowing glimmer weaving through the storm of chaos. "Keep speaking to her heart." I nodded, recognizing the weight of her words, feeling them embedding deep into my soul with an unstoppable force. "Clara," I whispered, desperation clawing at my heartache. "Remember the day we picked out your first sketchbook? Or when you stumbled upon the old easel at that flea market? You dreamed of painting oceans and skies, of capturing the laughter of everyone in brush strokes. You dreamed of making a difference. You have already made your mark." As I poured my heart into the words, Clara's body became still, the frantic beeping of the monitors began to even out, and surprise turned to acute awareness in her eyes. I want to," she murmured weakly, and this utterance tore through the chaos, carrying the message of her fight amid the flurry of medical jargon taking place around us. "I want to paint." Time seemed to freeze in that suspended moment. The world narrowed around Clara's words, the essence of hope coalescing into something almost palpable. The energy in the room shifted, nurses exchanged glances, their urgency mingling with astonished hope, and then, as if bearing witness to a long-awaited epiphany, a serene calm enveloped us. The tumult of alarms blaring melded into a rhythmic tempo that blended into the background, allowing Clara's spirit to take center stage. Amid the relentless tide of fear, a metamorphosis began unfolding. The shadows receded, and Clara's eyes shone with determination, a light lifting in vibrant waves as her mind grasped onto the very essence of who she was. "I want to live," she declared, her voice resonating as clear as a bell, slicing through the remnants of despair still lingering in the air like whispered ghosts. The doctors were taken aback, their professional detachment giving way to stunned disbelief mixed with reverence. In that moment, Clara became a symbol of resilience. She was fighting, reclaiming her space in this world that had tried so desperately to reclaim her. But then, as the last vestiges of panic began to peel away, I remembered the suit, the man whose presence had loomed as a shadow over our hope. He stood at the doorway, utterly still, his expression caught between incredulity and something else, a dawning understanding. "Mrs. Jensen," he began, his voice unsteady. I couldn't foresee, of course." "You couldn't," I interrupted, the fire of conviction igniting in my chest as the truths of this ordeal broke free. "She's more than just a line on a chart or a number made by a formula. She's life itself, a representation of love, dreams, and art. This is not just a fight for medical care, this is a fight for her right to exist in this beautiful chaos called life." An imperceptible shift lingered in the air as I held Clara's gaze. Every word was willed to manifest, and the room crackled with possibility. I had fought against despair before, but now I found myself ready to challenge the system that threatened to snuff out the very presence of light in our lives. As Clara took a deep, steadying breath, the time suspended around us felt electric, filled with promise. Each heartbeat echoed a mantra of unwavering belief, that she was worthy of every effort, every moment of care, every prayer, and that we would fight together until her last breath, refusing to let her slip away into the shadows. In the silence that followed, as if the universe had shifted around our collective desire for healing, the man in the suit nodded slowly, and for the first time, he seemed to see us not as a patient, nor as a calculation, but as a family grasping at life with unequivocal love. "Then let's make sure this light doesn't dim," he said, a new resolve blooming in his voice, and just like that, as hope spread its wings within the fragile sanctuary of those hospital walls, I turned my gaze back to Clara, her eyes still shimmering with life and possibility. Life was here, and it would surge, not merely coiling around her prognosis but painting bright strokes upon the fabric of our shared journey. We had emerged from the depths of despair, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, and at that very moment, against the backdrop of hope and reclamation, we declared a bittersweet truth: miracles don't just happen, we create them through love, belief, resilience, and the unfathomable strength of a spirit that refuses to fade. "Together," I whispered, and as we held on to each other through the tears and reverberating challenge, Clara smiled the first real smile in so long, an undeniable promise of brighter tomorrows waiting to blossom. And I realized, in that utterly tangible moment, that love is the greatest miracle of all.